Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. As we near the head towards the end of the day one of the 7th ETAuto EV Conclave, it gives me great pleasure and honor to be the moderator of this panel discussion on scope of software and connected technologies to create robust EV ecosystems. Considering that we are running a little behind schedule, so I'll straight away start off with my role of posing the questions to the esteemed panelists. But first of all, I need to express my gratitude and thanks to all of you for sparing your time and participating in this panel discussion. I'm sure it will be a very interesting and engaging, at least half an hour of discussions. So start off with two key components. One is the software part, and another is the connected technologies. Both bring a lot of value to any vehicle, why only EVs, but in the EV, when it comes to, particularly in the EV space, they bring add a different dimension of values in many aspects, facets of the vehicle, from good to have features to very critical, some safety critical, and also the functional areas of the vehicle, of an EV, and not to mention the overall ecosystem of, let's say, at the distribution level and at the end retail level, also in terms of software technologies and connected technologies. But to start off with, let me get the OEM's perspectives on this whole evolving trend of increasing software penetration and the connected technologies. And there's also a viewpoint that connected technologies will also help fuel the growth of the overall EV market. To start off with, Anand, just wanted to get your perspective on the evolution of the EV market, especially passenger vehicles, where Tata Motors has done exceedingly well. So kudos to you and the entire team. But tell me, that and the connected vehicle relationship, connected vehicle technology relationship, how do you see it progressing, and what kind of role is the connected technology megatrend also playing to fuel the other megatrend of electric EVs?
Right. So first of all, I want to tell you that there's a big shift that is happening in the way consumer behavior is today and the way that people therefore use mobility. And as a result of that, there's a significant diffusion of technology that is happening in everything that we do automotive, leading to a lot of technologies being incorporated. And when you have these technologies incorporated, you have data coming out, and in a way there is democratization of data. Now, that is leading to 4 large trends, and which is supported significantly by EVs, because EVs inherently are more compatible to be able to play with this. And the 4 large trends are about autonomous, that we understand, where we need to bring in more sensors, we need to bring in more connected capabilities, and therefore compute capabilities also. The second one is connected. So people want to be connected not only to their cars, but to the external world at large. And therefore, that's the second aspect. Electrification, of course, as I said, offers this unique ability to, because it is ready to be able to talk about and be able to interface with these changes that are happening. And the last one is about shared, as we know. So when we look at this, the abilities to change the way that we look at vehicles, the way that mobility comes into effect is humongous. And that, I think, is the change that we are seeing, which is likely to accelerate from here on.
Okay. Of course, it will, and also with the automobile becoming increasingly software defined. So now I think there is, I was talking to one of the industry leaders recently, and he was saying, the viewpoint was that we are approaching a stage wherein maybe kind of using the terms of case or ACEs, it may be passé, because SDV is the new in thing. On that note, coming to you, Gaurav, for MG, connected vehicle technology was also kind of played as a role of a pillar to build your brand story in India. Of course, the internet inside badge on the Hector was, no, and the connected features were very much highlighted and for the right reasons. And it seems consumers also lapped it up. Tell me, on the part of integration of software technologies and connected vehicles, how was your experience, and what, from the consumer perspective, what was the reaction, and going forward, or you may have already started receiving the feedback and demand, consumer demands, new consumer demands, which come as feedback to you?
Thank you. So, I'll probably give that answer in two forms. Anand just talked about CASE, which is connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. I think we have to also look at one interesting fact which also will support the topic of the panel, which what we call internally as car as a platform. Car as a platform, or you can say CAP, C-A-A-P, and software as a differentiator, which we now believe it will be software as an enabler. And for software to become the enabler, connectivity plays a very, very key role. So that is where the magic really comes into play, where software and connectivity come together, and that supports the car as a platform. And how does it support the car? Number one, it supports the customer's requirements inside the car and outside the car. So inside the car could be subscription services, and we'll talk about that during the course of the session as well, which again will have, whether it's utilities or entertainment or security. And outside the car becomes a lot more for infrastructure support. So that is how we see that the role of connectivity and software starts to play an evolving role, and more so in the area of electric vehicles. Now coming to the point about, yes, at MG we did bring in the first internet SUV with MG Hector, and we have seen that the entire consumer base today really looks at connectivity as a given in many ways. All of us today, we know that if you see the joke about the Maslow hierarchy triangle, Wi-Fi becomes the base level. So in that context today, the connectivity in the car is almost like a mandatory requirement. I see definitely a future, not too far away, where the way we would be buying cars in our younger days was, what's the engine size and what's the brake horsepower and what accessories I want. I see a future which is not so far away, where consumers will be talking about what are the apps in this car, what is the connectivity features in this car, and can I really move my home office into the car seamlessly and make it a continuum. That's the way we see this world moving forward.
Right, indeed. And as you said, connected tech has become almost a kind of a hygiene factor for passenger cars. Now, let me bring in the voices of what may also qualify as a new crop of suppliers in the industry, which is technology players and technology, not the conventional technology players, but new age technology players, and telecom service providers. So they are now entered the kind of arena of very critical suppliers to OEMs. So to start off with, Siddharth, your viewpoint on the penetration trend or the evolution trend of IoT in the automobile. What next could be offered with the IoT technology, and also with the advent of 5G. What are the new avenues that this whole 5G could offer for automobile applications, for example?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So to start with this, I think we already heard Anand and Gaurav talk about how connectivity and connected and software is going to play a crucial role in enabling the auto ecosystem, right? So this trend started about 3.5 years back with all autos getting connected, right? And more vehicles are now getting connected. Any new vehicle that comes on the road, I think getting it connected and having connected car features is like a bare minimum now, right? It's become a baseline requirement now. Post that now with the evolution of 5G, with the evolution of EV now coming in, with the electric vehicle wave coming in, I think this is going to be even more critical. And the reason I say this is for EV proliferation, essentially having connectivity for all infrastructure elements is going to be crucial. What's one of the major challenges for EV to be picked up, right? If I'm a user, I would think range anxiety. I don't know where, I'll get charging infra available. What is the range I'll get? And to address this problem, the vehicle needs to be connected, the battery needs to be connected, the charging infra needs to be connected, right? Because only if they are connected, you get data available to a consumer on a real-time basis, and basis that you can address this, worry that a consumer always has, right? So it's going to be a very, very basic and core requirement now. And that's where connectivity, IoT technology is going to be playing a crucial role, right? So we as a telecom service provider, we have built an IoT platform, built on connectivity as a layer, and we are building solutions which addresses these concerns of the ecosystem players, right? So that's where this is playing a crucial role. On the second question on 5G, right? So 5G is coming up. You would have seen in the past few months, there's a big spectrum auction that happened. We believe 5G is going to be a great enabler for this entire ecosystem, right? So as an industry, we have spent billions of dollars now in terms of acquiring spectrum, and now we are deploying at a very, very rapid pace. Almost 60 odd cities are already covered on 5G from Airtel. I think a few things will get enabled using 5G, right? One is smart manufacturing, the industry 4.0 revolution. So let me take an example of how do you have a computerized vision which is utilized in a factory location to ensure your paint shop or painting on a vehicle is being inspected on a real-time basis, right? So 5G is essentially going to drive a lot of low latency use cases where a huge throughput is needed. And this is one such example, right? And eventually, from an auto standpoint, you will see technologies like V2V, V2X emerging, where vehicles will communicate with each other, where vehicles will communicate with the infrastructure elements around you. And this will end up driving better safety as well for the consumer, right? So this is how it will evolve in the future term as well. Right now, it will take off with respect to B2B use cases in Industry 4.0. But this is eventually where it will move ahead.
Okay, thanks. Now, in this whole game, the end consumer is very, very crucial, and there's a reason for which it's said that the customer is the king. But to understand the customer better, to get information to the customer better, to profile the customer better, and to understand his or her needs better, there's also a trend of leveraging cloud technology or connected technology. Gaurav, I mean, you represent an organization which specializes in this. So tell us, in terms of what's the scope of leveraging connected technologies or cloud-based technology to get to profile the customer better, for better customer acquisition, retention, etc.
Thank you, Sumantra. So we've been talking about a connected car, and I would just like to talk about something different, and that is the user of that car. So we are seeing a paradigm shift in consumer behavior and purchasing patterns, and it is my belief that it's no longer the car that is connected, it's the whole ecosystem. It's the entire connected customer experience. This is something that we are seeing with all OEMs, because today's customer is extremely discerning. Earlier in the day, you heard Bhavish saying that the smartest person in the room is the customer, and is also the most discerning today because they are spoiled for choice. They have several options, and they begin their buying journey far, far before they actually come to a physical showroom, right? So it's becoming increasingly important that while we work on connected experiences within the car, we also create a connected customer experience. Now, what do I mean by that? We need to connect with the customer across their entire buying journey, from the time the customer visits your website, to the time they start prospecting, to the time they start passing information to you about their choices, what kind of car, what kind of range, what kind of EV. And then it extends to the test ride, it extends to the dealer, it extends to service. And I just want to bring up a statistic here. It's been found by a Bain survey that there's about 60% sales detraction that happens between sales and service. That means a person who wants to purchase something from a showroom decides not to do so because of the behavior and the experience that he or she encounters within the showroom. It could be because the person showing him the car or bike doesn't know enough or doesn't know his preferences, his choices. And so it's becoming increasingly important that we use technology to know and understand the customer and personalize journeys for them. And this is where OEMs can't do this on their own. They have to do this through their dealers and distributor networks. They have to do this through all customer touch points, whether it is sales or whether it is service. So this is just a perspective that I want to leave you with. I think that when we are talking about a connected vision, it's extending the connected car to the connected customer.
Just to get a perspective, again, or the OEM's perspective on this whole customer journey, from appealing to the customer to engaging with the customer and then acquiring the customer. Could you throw some light on how, what Gaurav said as an extension to that, how are OEMs looking at this whole digitalization of this whole process, this whole journey, and adding new dimension to it?
Right. So I agree with the part that Gaurav said where it's important and very crucial for us to have this information about customers and the way that customers are shopping today, the way that customers access vehicles, the way that customers look at vehicles, because there's such a huge amount of data available. Most times we find that people who walk into our showrooms are already aware about what vehicles they want to do. They are aware about technologies. They've already done past research and they've zeroed down. Why they visit the showroom is only to verify and validate what they have already checked out. And therefore, how do you enable this kind of behavior of customers is going to be an important part of how we deal with or how we interface with customers in the future. Secondly, a lot of times people are actually looking for some clarifications, and that's where what Gaurav said becomes important, that it's this validation phase that happens has to be dealt with very, very carefully and very sensitively so that you do not detract. While there could be differences about the numbers in a specific case versus what we see in our industry, that doesn't really go away from the fact that you need to handhold the customer, and that information is absolutely important.
Gaurav, MG's experience, I mean, not really connected technology, but in the digitalization journey, I still recall, I think in 2018, if I'm not wrong, you started with a pilot project with that dealership in Bangalore.
A showroom without a car.
Yeah, showroom without a car. So how has it progressed? And I mean, in terms of leveraging connected technology beyond the vehicle, could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, I feel that the power of the showroom and everything resides on this small screen. That is where the first interface starts to work. Whether it's through a social media or through a visiting of your website or whatever, it's on that small screen. And that journey from that small screen to maybe a bigger screen at home because of maybe more engagement, then eventually the showroom, all of this can be not in the linear manner anymore now. So that I think is a big change that is happening. In the earlier days, it used to always be, if you follow the marketing funnel also, there's awareness, then there is familiarity, and then there is consideration. Now it can go across in various ways because the different bullets you get of information, that drives your thought process and your selection process. Now when we, at MG at least, I can say that overall this connectivity across the system really works pretty well. We've got a car configurator which is on the screen on your mobile. That if you work on that and you walk into the showroom, you can take on from there itself. So if you have shortlisted, let's say, a red car with a particular feature content or accessories content and you want to see that, you can see it in the showroom. But we have expanded that now, that you can see that accessories being fitted on the car through an AI surface, what we call as an MG expert. So you and your friends, your family, all of them can come simultaneously and see the real car being customized to your requirement and choose your element. That is what triggered the thought of, do we really need a car in a showroom? The reason was, that for many of our dealer partners, and specifically in India, the real estate cost is becoming very, very high. And like Anand said, when a lot of the decision factor has been considered before you walk into a facility, can you look at optimizing the overall costs in the entire value chain? So if you reduce your space of a display, but instead of that, you have immersive experience there. You know, we're talking of Meta and all, it will be some time away, but all of them really help to engage with the customer. And then whoever wants to drive the car physically, you have it in the outside area to drive. So for us, I think that experiment taught us a lot of new inputs as well. So we have worked out one more of the, we call it the MG Studio, that is coming up in Chennai, in fact, just about a week from now. So we are going to expand that gradually as we go along, keeping in mind the optimization of the expenses, the need of the customer, what he or she wants to experience, and eventually taking advantage of the connected system of the customer.
That's interesting to know how it is progressing. You know, since we are talking
Sumantra,
also about...
Sumantra, if I
Yeah,
may.
please.
So Gaurav, adding to your point, I think creating that immersive experience is becoming increasingly important, and I just want to recall that we have a customer who's using a customer app, and it's for a EV two-wheeler. You know, there are cases when you have the same two-wheeler being driven by 3 different people. You know, it's like the school-going or college-going kid is driving it, or maybe his sister is driving it, or maybe the dad is driving it later. So there are 3 different personas, right? But each user would want some kind of personalization. So here's this app which creates 3 different personas. One for the boy, one for the sister, one for the dad. So they log in through their persona and they have a completely personalized experience. You know, just adding to what he was saying. So the whole immersive experience and extending it into a personalized or a hyper-personalized app is what is going to make a difference in terms of customer experience, which I think is going to be a very big differentiator.
Thank you. And since we are talking about leveraging connected technology or kind of tapping the software better to create robust EV ecosystems, Anand, I would like to know from you in terms of leveraging what's the technology trend in developing new EV architecture, electrical and electronic architectures, because now it's, as I was saying earlier, it's getting increasingly software defined. So in the EV space, it's even more so. So could you throw some light on where we stand and what are the next levels of evolution in this area?
So one of the most important things that is happening is with, while we said about ACES, you know, the number of ECUs within the car is growing significantly. Only about 10 years back, if you looked at what was the latest car at that point of time, you would probably have 10 or 12, maybe 15 ECUs. Today, with all the sensorization that is happening on the cars, modern day electrical architectures would look at easily upwards of 50 to 60, and in some cases, even up to 100 ECUs. Now, when you look at all this heavy amount of sensorization that is happening, plus the amount of computing power that is required in order to do that, you automatically need to make sure that the car is geared in order to make sure that all of these facilities can be incorporated. This implies effects on how you design the vehicle. It has impact on the looks of the car. It has impact on the compute capability of the car. It has, in fact, there's a lot of work that is currently going on in terms of how much energy would be going into the computational power on the car, and therefore optimization on the energy efficiency, energy utilization, and all of these things need to be developed in the new age architecture. Increasingly, people are also therefore talking about domain control units rather than independent ECUs which were run on CAN or multi-CAN systems. And therefore, there's a huge lot of optimization that's happening in that space also. So overall, I think as we go further, the amount of connected technologies that would sit on the car would significantly expand from what it is today. In fact, increasing from, let's say, about 15 to 17% of the total car's value up to almost about 35% of the car's value.
And that would also have perhaps have another impact on its, how do I say, sustainability quotient, for example, which means the more ECUs you use, perhaps the less number of wiring harnesses, for example, which means less amount of copper being used, mined for vehicle manufacturing. So perhaps they could be, yeah. So, Gaurav, I mean, you have been involved in building a brand from scratch in India. You've been involved in building a brand from scratch in India. Tell us, in terms of the Indian consumers' appetite and preferences of technologies, especially related to connected technologies. Now, how is it? Is it any different than some of the other markets where MG is already present, or some of them are quite unique to India? And what are they, if there are any?
I think I would say that the consumer today in India is as global as anywhere in the world, and all of us at the core, we are all human. So the basic evaluation process all works out in a very similar manner. Bringing the topic to electric vehicle, I would say that the way the consumers are seeing EVs, of course, many people do get driven by the fact that there is an environment factor, and there is something that we all can do in our own ways, and we can change what we can. But a large factor of the EV movement is also happening because of the overall economics that people are seeing with an electric vehicle. So while the initial acquisition cost is very high, one change that we are seeing now increasingly is that when we see the entire, let's say, a 5 or a 6 year duration of the ownership of the car, and they're able to see the efficiencies and the cost savings across the 5 years. So for example, ballpark, an electric vehicle, let's say, whether it's any brand, let's say in our case, for the ZS EV, it'll be ballpark of 1 rupee a kilometer, right? Whereas a traditional ICE vehicle, whether it's a gasoline, petrol, or a diesel, will have multiples of that variant. So when you look at the maths in terms of initial acquisition cost and the running cost, and then we always do the resale value also, right? So you bring in the entire chain, you would see the benefit of an electric vehicle. That becomes very important for people to see, and as more and more people are seeing that, that is where the magic is occurring, where you see an increasingly demand growing for EVs. I mean, to give you numbers, in 2019, the overall Indian market, passenger vehicle, was just about 2,000 electric vehicles. That's all, ballpark. Last year, it was close to 50,000 electric vehicles, having 2 years of COVID. And this year, if Anand may permit, I think we are going to be seeing at least a multiple of 4 or 5 of this base, right? So you're seeing a very progressive growth, not just because you have consumers, waiting to buy the EVs, but now the momentum is coming on. And I think that is where we are going to see this entire shift of electric vehicles. And I'm very sure that the vision of the government also of 30 by 2030, which is 30% of the automotive industry will be electric vehicles for passenger cars. I think that 30% will probably come much earlier.
Right. And the right term is exponential, no? And
Exactly,
when it comes
yeah.
to EV growth. And
can I just add one more thing?
Yeah,
Sorry,
please.
I might take Siddharth and Gaurav's time. But I think one important factor, and I don't know if you're capturing that, is the consumer's confidence on the infrastructure is really, really becoming very, very strong. It is like, it's a very simple example. People who are doing running, so there's a Nike running club, for example, or there are people who play badminton or golfers. They have their own clubs, right? So they get their entire network, where should I do my daily running, or where should I go and play? So they are very well connected. Similarly, but the others are not, so they don't know much about that. So same thing for the EV. The ones who are jumping onto the EV bandwagon, they are able to see, and they are able to see the entire connectivity system on the screen in the car or on the mobile.
they are experiencing and appreciating the value of
exactly.
connected tech.
So I've seen people, and I've spoken to people where they are saying that, my running cost has come down. Second, the anxiety which is there is actually no more there once you own the car.
Yeah.
And what is happening is that infrastructure is there growing very fast. The utilization of the fast DC chargers across the country is actually less than 5%. Only less than 5% is the charger usage in the country. So as more and more cars come on the road, these will get used a lot. So take example, we are in Delhi. Delhi to Jaipur, you've got chargers on the way. Delhi Chandigarh, you've got chargers on the way. Whether it's in dhabas or whether it's in the areas where people congregate for coffee or whatever, they're all parked everywhere. So if you are an EV customer, you will see this chain coming along. That is what is driving the word of mouth and movement to EV also.
The interesting insights there. Siddharth, now with this also growing trend of IoT, there's also a growing opportunity for monetization of features, right? So as a service provider, what are the opportunities that you plan or you are in the process of offering to your customers who then can leverage them to monetize?
So this is something very interesting. In fact, Gaurav can also vouch for this. We have been working very closely with MG as well. See, typically when all these connected vehicles are coming on the road today, whether it's four-wheelers, even two-wheelers, EVs as well, typically there's a telematic service or infotainment service that is bundled when a vehicle is sold, right? You're bundling it for, let's say, 3 years, 1 year, depending on the OEM. The consumer obviously gets hooked onto it. He uses the service. Everything is available on an app, on the dash. What happens at the end of 3 years? Once the bundling period is over, right? That's the stage that we are reaching now, because some of the earlier vehicles that were sold have reached this stage. And essentially, how do you really monetize? So the onus of whether the consumer wants to continue using the service, that's a question mark, right? It was a question mark on us. But then, as I think my fellow panelists have vouched for earlier, I think the consumer is very discerning, and the kind of service and experience once he experiences, he's willing to pay also for it. So interestingly, what we have been able to do is, let's say the bundle period is over, you are anyway monitoring the basic telematics data, the battery data that is needed for the OEM to do, right? The data consumption for that might be low. But then when you are giving value-added services like, let's say, maps or music and so on and so forth, you want the consumer to choose, right? Give the flexibility to the consumer, right? And that's how we have enabled a model where we are letting the consumer choose and pay for it. If you want to really subscribe to the service, come and pay for it, right? And we'll subscribe it on the go. And this is very, very tightly coupled between, let's say, a telecom service provider like Airtel and auto OEM like an MG or a Tata, and then the consumer is experiencing this, right? And you can always keep providing more and more service to the customer. If you want to pay this much, this is what you can get, right? So it's a very interesting business model that is actually evolving, as a part of this. The same thing will apply for EVs as well, right? Another thing, I just want to touch upon another example. So you have these charging infra providers as well, right? Now their business model is obviously to monetize. They have put up a charging infra station. It has to be utilized, right? And you're trying to monetize that as well. One of the questions or problems when we meet a lot of our customers is, they want to ensure that there is connectivity, right? That's when we realize connectivity is the heart of the adoption. If there is no connectivity, a consumer can't really come there, access, pay for it, and then use the charging station. And that's a loss of business for the customer. So how do you really enable it, right? These are the kind of questions that come to us as a telecom service provider. So in that case, I mean, we understand that there might be issues, there might be connectivity dark spots, you can't really avoid them. But then there are ways and means that we are trying to address them through, providing a secondary operator. Primary is Airtel, can you bundle a secondary operator along with it, and it switches on to the secondary operator whenever, there is no connectivity, right? So a single operator, I'm trying to address that issue. You can have alternative channels of communication as well, which is SMS, for example, in low coverage areas. So I think we are trying to link it to the business models of customers. We are trying to understand those problems and then trying to, help the ecosystem. Okay. Those are my two examples.
Thank you there. Now we, open the floor for questions.
Sumantra, can I just add one
yeah,
thing?
you would
Sorry,
like that?
not that I love to hear my own voice, but I think one very important thing for all of us we should look at, because the topic is about ecosystem. So one is, of course, the cars. But I think one key factor which we all should be looking at and is working in progress is the work on software and connectivity in the charging infrastructure. Now, what do I mean by that? Suppose you're living in a condominium, right? And you've got 50 or 100 apartments. Imagine a future where, as of now, OEMs, and I would say for us also, we are providing an AC fast charger in customers' houses, right? But the grid load is limited. It is what it is. So our joint attempt through software and connectivity has to be that how are we able to really get the full, harness the full potential of the grid, remove any wastage, and at the same time secure the entire services for any kind of outage that may be. So imagine if there are 50 or 100 cars in one condominium or one association plugging in the car at 7 in the evening. Imagine the load that will be there on the grid. Customers are also at their homes, right?
Yes.
So at the back end, there's going to be a work in progress which is there for smart grid management. That is very critical. And along with that, you also have got balancing of charging of the cars available. So the chargers are connected, the grid also is linked up, and that ensures uniformity depending on the car usage, you know, how much of charge is required. So if, let's say, 4 cars are parked, and my car already, let's say, is at 70% usage, you know, maybe the grid supply will lower down my charging rate, and Anand's car requires more charge, they will be charging it at higher rate.
Right.
So the back-end system has to have this smart balancing approach.
And it will be software defined.
It's software driven because, you know, changing or increasing the grid supply means a lot more investment. And eventually then the whole purpose of sustainability also will be in a circle, right? So this is one area which I think will be very important from a perspective of connectivity and software for the ecosystem. The second thing is that this entire journey will bring a lot of new startups coming into the sector. What do you mean by startups? Right now when you've got, I talked about the journey, let's say you're doing Delhi, Jaipur or Bombay, Pune or Chennai, Bangalore. You know, you have chargers put by different charge point operators, you know, company A, company B, company C. So as consumers, we have to have different applications or different apps on our mobile or in the car as well. I see very soon that there will be someone who will have offer a common marketplace. I don't want to count or name, let's say, the ones we have in our food business, but I do see a future where you have a common market application, and if I'm going from point A to point B, that route is already mapped on my system, and I'm able to leverage any of those charges, whether it is company A, B, or C, seamlessly it is bound with my, my payment portal, and I'm able to use it. Now, who will do all this? I feel that, you know, there'll be a lot of new startups who will come up, who will bring this technology in, or who will be much more, I would say, speedy to this area.
Right.
So this entire ecosystem is going to see a lot of coming up, sprucing up of newcomers in the business. One more topic which I think will be relevant for the audience is, let's say, the fleet service providers. You know, so if you've got, let's say, and there are a lot of them now in various parts of the country. So if I'm a fleet owner with 50 cars, right, and I've got my chargers at the back end, similarly, so if I know that which car is used for long-term drive or is used for short-term drive, you know, what kind of charging balancing I should be doing, because the battery health also gets changed as per your charging habit and charging cycles. So all of that also will come into play in the ecosystem because of the smart chargers, the entire connectivity of how much charge is required and at what point you charge which vehicle. So that part I think is critical. We talked about the cars, but I thought I'll just share with the audience that how this whole ecosystem will move forward with the interplay of connectivity and software.
And very valid points there, and some interesting scenarios you have, future scenarios that are painted for us. Thank you very much, Gaurav. Any questions from the floor that you would like to ask? Yes, a gentleman there, I can see.
Yeah, my question is to Gaurav ji and Anand ji. Okay, I'll get back to you. So basically, so we are talking about a lot of charging infrastructure, charging AI and all those things so that we reduce sustainability, bringing it down on the grid. But the basic principle of, because in every society there's going to be a 1 Hector, 1 Nexon and other cars. So we are having different type of chargers for every car. So we have not integrated our chargers as a industry, and we are having different type of chargers, different volts, different things. So don't you think that we need to integrate and come to a common platform for it?
So sorry, yeah, you can.
So I think we are already integrated in that sense, because we use CCS2, which is a common standard, and whether it is a MG EZS or a Tata Nexon or a Hyundai Kona, you have the same port, and CCS2 standard is common.
I'll add to what Anand said. See, we have all evolved in this journey, right? So if you go back 3 years ago, Yes, there were different kind of chargers required for certain vehicles. We had Bharat State chargers. Now we had, globally they were moving to CHAdeMO and CCS2, but most of the players now are working on CCS2, combined charging system 2. So the chargers are going to be compatible for most of the vehicles available. But the charging speed is a function of what kind of motor you have in the vehicle itself. So a 7.34 kilowatt charger will have a different rate of charging for, let us say, a ZS EV. It will have a different rate of charging, let's say, for a Nexon, or for tomorrow a new car which MG may bring or some other brand. That will vary as per the motor on the car as well. So, but CCS2 is more or less a defined system for India as of now.
Because it happened with me. I was with my friend in his Nexon. We came to Khan Market. We came from a round of golf at JP. He was at 9% battery, and that charger won't fit in.
I'm really surprised because with the CCS2, I mean, it's a common charging protocol, right? So it's unlikely, unless, of course, the gun that was being used from that particular charger happened to be of a different protocol.
It was going on Mahindras. And another question to Gaurav.
I think, sorry, because paucity of
the
time,
old
we'll have to
chargers,
give.
So,
someone
so if you refer, by the time the mic comes back, if you're referring to the old low voltage systems, then that was a different charging protocol.
We can take one more question.
Yes.
Gentleman there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Anurag Luthra, independent consultant. Just wanted to understand when we are talking about moving the office to the car as well as a lot of computational power that is required. Are we looking at the cloud as a resource for this kind of application?
Absolutely. In fact, there's only so much of hardware and memory that can be in the car itself. Large part of it plays in the rests in the cloud. In fact, I'll give you an example. At least right now we have used blockchain technology, and consumers can actually have the entire digital car passport. You know, the data of the car, where it has driven, what is the usage, etc. And that entire data is in the cloud, which the customer can only access. So the cloud will play a and is already going to play a key role. And that is how the entire V2X also starts to get enabled actually.
So only one additional qualification to what Gaurav said. There is data that, see, there are two types of data. There is some data that can reside in the cloud. And then there is some data based on which you need to make decisions on the spot. For example, when you do ADAS, when you do autonomous, you need to be able to make decisions at that point, otherwise the latency would be too much. And therefore, the compute power still has an effect, while when data proliferates, there will always be some amount of data which can go on the cloud, like Gaurav said. There will always also be the ability to compute and decide and make those decisions on board.
Thank you. Gentlemen, on that note, I think it's a wrap on this session because Anand has to catch a flight back, and we are also moving towards a very interesting part of the day, which is the arrival of the chief guest of this ETAuto EV Conclave, Honorable Minister Nitin Gadkari ji. So we look forward to that session also, and at the same time, I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to all the panelists and to a lovely audience for your attention and your engagement in this discussion. So thank you very much.